Welcome to Civil Discourse. I'm Jayme Marilyn here with Marilyn Brown, and today I actually want to talk about Madonna's acceptance speech of Woman of the Year at the Billboard Music Awards. I thought it was a very, very powerful speech. I'll let you go first. What were your kind of impressions of it?
Yeah, my impressions, I agree. It was extremely powerful, and I like the way she was so vulnerable and so authentic and so raw. And so it felt very it was extremely powerful, but it was, very unapologetic and honest. And I think we don't see that level of vulnerability with people these days, and we don't see that level of like honesty. And it was just really amazing. I mean, she talked about so many different things, from her trauma to bullying that she went through. And it just really, to see someone that we've watched from afar kind of go through these things and grow up over the years. We first met her when she was 19, when she first started performing. And so it was just really, to kind of see that, to be allowed into the honest truth of what she was going through, and that behind the scenes stuff that we don't usually see, but yet people kind of are constantly trying to speculate about. So it was really, really amazing to watch her do that.
Yeah, it was because I didn't watch the actual award show. I just saw so
Mm-mm.
many people posting about it, so then I watched it. And what struck me was how mindful it was. She talked a lot about her pain and the naysayers and people who have done a lot of wrong towards her, and or people she knows, or women in general.
Mm-hmm.
And it all came from such a mindful place of realizing that all those things were necessary for her to be where she is now, and they were all major learning experiences. And even though it was obvious that there was still pain there wasn't, it didn't seem like there was hate or fear or any aggression towards anything. It was all very love and accepting and empowerment. She It's interesting to see someone express themselves so clearly in a way that used trauma as an empowerment tool, which is something we often talk about in mindfulness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think you're right on it, that she was so mindful throughout the whole, how she talked about everything. And um there was never any judgment for those that have hurt her. And though, she didn't speak about that. It was, just coming from a place of these are how these things affected me, and this is how I used it to continue my work, and how she even kind of turned that pain into to and brought that into her art. And it was, I think you're right that it's not something that we talk about it in a more disconnected way, but to actually hear someone talk about how she did that. And again, it just continued to strike me that, like, in our collective minds as the public, this is someone that we on some level feel like we know, right? And we feel like
Mm-hmm.
we've known her these years and we've watched these things. And so it just really just reminds me so much that we have no idea what each other are going through, or what those things, what meaning we make of the things that we go through. And that was what I kind of, that the theme for me. She made meaning out of her trauma and out of her struggles, and yet she was so honest about how we also need to continue I think by her sharing that, that's another way that she's making meaning, because she's able to, talk about it in such an honest way for young women who are going through some of these things, and being able to say, um, this was my trauma and this was my struggle, and we have to kind of stop continuing to judge each other in these ways. And so I felt like she did it in a way that didn't feel preachy, it didn't feel judgmental, it just felt empowering. Like it made me think about, how do I support other women in my life, and how can I continue to support other women, and also to think critically about how I've maybe, how I've contributed to other women's pain through my own beliefs that I wasn't aware of. My own beliefs about myself, my own beliefs about them. And so I really just think that she did it in such a way that it wasn't like, I don't feel like, I don't, there, some people may, but I didn't feel like on the defensive, like she's accusing us of all being,
Right.
mean girls to each other or something like that. It felt very compassionate and empowering
Yeah.
for me,
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think it was interesting, but she brought up feminism a few times, but because the story was so personal and not from a place of judgment and just from expressing her experience and her feelings, I think she made one of the best cases I've heard in a while for feminism and what it means, and getting, because I think it's similar when you talk about when racism or sexism or any of these kind of isms, is there's sides to it. So the sides kind of use the words and try to use the words in the way they want. So then there's
Mhm.
always kind of these negative things, and you have to play with, well, this person has a negative view of this word, so maybe we shouldn't use it because now they're stuck on the word and you're not getting through. But I think
Right.
she did a really good job of cutting through that. And she, at one point, she brought up, her name is escaping me, a very prominent um, figure in the feminist movement, who I think it was when she released her erotica album, said that she was taking the women's rights movement back decades.
Mm-hmm.
And the way she said it, you could tell how affected she was by that statement. But
Mm-hmm.
in telling that story, she didn't attack or criticize that other woman in
Right.
what she said. She basically just expressed how it made her feel, which I
Mm-hmm.
think is why it was so powerful. And for me,
Yeah.
I think when you're talking about any of these things, like if you're talking about sexism or racism, as a white man, I'm not directly affected by those things.
Mm-hmm.
So specifically in this, it was interesting because as an activist, I'm aware on a very intellectual level the issues. But I mean, I grew up with a single mother who was in corporate America and very powerful, doing very well for herself. Most of my teachers growing up were women. Just me naturally, I don't know if it was because of my mom or if it was just what I gravitated to as an artist. Most of the music that I listened to as a child was women. It was Bjork. It was I listened to a lot of it. It was very powerful
Mm-hmm.
women who were in charge of their careers. Even like Sarah McLachlan, which is
Uh-huh.
a lighter like genre, but she
Yeah.
was starting the first all women tours and
Right.
concerts, and it was so. It's sometimes what I loved about it is how jarring it was for me, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
intellectually aware of all those issues, but don't have personal experience with them,
Mm-hmm.
because I think with my upbringing, I don't consciously see those things. I see, I mean, I'm sure there's subconscious things that because of conditioning from our culture that happen, but I think I kind of lead with equality, and I really don't see, like in business partners or in just relationships, if I really analyze my behavior, I don't really see a big difference between the way I treat people based on gender, or what I think more importantly what I think is capable,
Right.
which is a danger in itself, because sometimes I'll be like, well, why, she's a powerful woman, like I don't know, why isn't she doing this? And then it's going to take that story for me to say, oh, it is because, bring all that stuff that I know kind of into it because I'm just thinking, well, I don't see what the problem is. So,
right? Because you don't see it that way.
yeah.
So you can't put that lens on until you're kind of told that there's a different lens that other people kind of come from in that way.
And the
Yeah.
David Bowie thing she said was so
Oh.
powerful to me as she was talking about how she was there accepting the Woman of the Year, and when she was growing up, she didn't say this directly, but she was basically saying, yes, I was influenced by a lot of women, but the people artistically who were really influencing me were men. And she brought up David Bowie, and she brought up all the reasons why. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, you're pretty much defining your career now. But then she twisted it to being like, and then when I tried to do those things, they told me I couldn't.
Right.
And she did it anyways.
She did it anyway. But she was criticized.
But she was criticized, and you can. I don't want to speculate like what would have happened if the culture was differently in her career, but you could see what I could see is you could see the emotional difference if in her life and her experience if it would have been accepted and she didn't have to fight as much.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think a couple of things come up when I think about that, and she wasn't saying I didn't have a successful career because I'm a woman, that I wasn't, she wasn't attributing that to like any failure. She was just recognizing that a lot of the criticism that she got, she wouldn't have gotten had she been a man, and it's interesting because, it's also kind of, I think we're so critical of everyone. So we're constantly judging, and our celebrities and our public figures, we really, really pick them apart. And so I think that people would have found something else, but recognizing that the biggest, a lot of people's biggest complaint, biggest criticism of her was her being comfortable with her sexuality and being comfortable expressing that in her music and in her art. And, it's funny because you think about it, like, where else is it appropriate to express, that side of yourself other than in art? I mean, it's not like she's, an attorney and going into the office putting on shows. I mean, it was, it's like you're criticizing an artist for her art and for expressing herself, and yet that's a lot of what women constantly struggle with. And a lot of what I came up for me when I was hearing her speak was how I prejudge myself and have most of my life tried to anticipate what the backlash could possibly be and then make my decisions and put myself into this box around that.
Right.
And how limiting and how much it really just colors everything that I do. And it's, in the last few years, I've really kind of gotten away from that. And I've done a lot of my own work through my mindfulness work to kind of be more aware of that and recognize it. But I just, I think about so much of my life is really kind of structured around how to be myself in the world, recognizing that the world already has boxes that they've decided to put me in, Yeah. And I think being a Black female, there's that intersectionality that happens. And so, it's like, if I'm not concerned that there may be preconceptions based on me being a woman, then I'm concerned that there will be preconceptions based on me being a Black, but just to hear her, just hearing her talk about that really kind of brought that up for me and made me think about how can I continue to empower myself to walk in my own truth the way she does, and I mean, that's one of the things that I feel like we've seen over the years. Towards the end, she said, the most kind of innovative, amazing thing that she's done is that she's stuck around, and we've watched her over the years, and I feel like she hasn't hidden from herself. Even when she got all this criticism and all this backlash, I feel like she even moved towards that, which, is one of the ways that you deal with things like that, when it's invalid, is by going into that, true self more. And so it's just kind of cool to think about how I can transfer that into my own life more.
Yeah, and I think it was what I feel like is lacking from a lot of conversation, which she did so brilliantly, is she was able to talk across the generations. It seems like
Hmm.
specifically in the feminist movement that the generations are very separate at the moment. I think we saw that a lot with the presidency and Hillary Clinton, and you saw kind of the the generation of women who grew up the same age as Hillary Clinton.
Hmm.
It was clear they had a different idea of what the struggle was
Hmm.
than millennial women,
Yes.
and I think that comes from that there has been progress that has been made and culture has shifted and things are just not it's not the same game.
Hmm.
It's still not. I mean, there's still a problem, but it's just a changed game. And I thought, without directly saying that, Madonna highlighted that shift as she talked about her
Hmm.
career, because she started
Hmm.
in it when it was very, I think, and it's the Hillary Clinton mentality of the way you get success and we get equality is by beating the men at their own game,
Yeah.
is kind of this idea, versus I think now the younger generations are more, well, we want to change the game. We don't want to play the man's game. Why should we have to do that? It's not about us being better than men
Right.
or as good as men. It's about us creating the world and the systems we want to create. And I think
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
butts head. I think if there was actual open dialogue, there would be a lot of understanding, but there's not. So
Right.
seeing this as such an open dialogue, and you saw when they were showing people in the audience, you
Hmm.
saw people of all races, all genders, even, and all ages, and they were all having the same reaction on their face. It was
Hmm.
just, you could tell that everyone was touched and moved and deep in thought after that speech, which was great. And I
Yeah.
think people also forget the subtleties, because I don't remember. I know this wasn't a realization of my own. I don't know if it's something I read online or if it was something in the media, but they were talking about, from a, I guess, public perspective of people who are looking at artists, the differences between how specifically musicians, but I also think it's very true for actors as well, how the public deals with it. Like,
Hmm.
you see, I remember when I was young with like I mean, this is a weird example, but like Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera and a lot of like the women that came out at the same time, it
Hmm.
almost seemed like, as someone, as a listener, you had to pick. It was constantly like, well, who's better? Which
Brittany.
music do you like? You can't listen to all of it. Like, you have to pick who you like. Do you like Madonna or Cher? Or do you like these things? And you never think of, like, no one ever says that about male musicians or actors. It's never like, oh, this one's better. That's not what the focus is on. It's, you
Right.
can like these two bands that are super similar,
Right.
and it's just what's accepted. Where when it's always about, and I mean, it's the media. The media does
Mhm.
that. I mean, I remember even watch like everything in the teen world when I was younger was about all these feuds between the pop stars, and you never really saw it about. I mean, I'm sure it was there a little bit with like boy bands or like the few, but nowhere near the level that it was with all this like fake gossip
Right.
among the women.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
So it,
I think
yeah.
yeah, I think you're right. Women are we're um there's this like idea of that women can't be friends, that women are catty. There's kind of this idea that women are constantly in competition with each other, and that's not really the reality I see. I think a lot of times, that's kind of the narrative, like you said, with media and with kind of we can be pushed into those boxes. But I think, you know, you look at a lot of the most effective communities and societies are when women are working together and really supporting each other and have kind of more of that collective culture. And so, but yeah, I think that there's this, you know, I don't know if it's part of just kind of that, like, you know, patriarchal kind of keep women, like if you keep us not getting along and like not helping each other, that we won't be as powerful. Like, I don't know, you know, I don't know
Yeah.
exactly where that comes from, but I think you're right that there is this, like, you know, pitting women against each other. I remember, you know, for me in the 90s, listening to like Brandy and Monica, and everybody's like, oh,
Right.
who do you like more, Brandy or Monica? And there's still like this list, like ridiculous, like false competition going on between the two of them, and they're two different artists. You know, they have two different styles, and it's like, can we like everybody? You know, so yeah, I think that, and when she said it, it broke my heart a little bit when she said that she wished for a female contemporary to like talk to and get support from when she was kind of going through all of this in her career. And I was like, yeah, she didn't. There wasn't really anybody, you know, like, whereas like there was the like Christina, Britney, like kind of they were contemporaries, and even though they were pitted against each other, but that it was that broke my heart when she said that, you know, because you could just really see like the loneliness that she must have felt during a lot of those years. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other big thing on the mindfulness that I think she did very well is she, without saying this directly, she showed how interconnected the issue is, because it's not just, I think it's easy and it's our instinct to try to find another to blame, and she didn't do that. She basically said it's a problem that everything reinforces. So it's women feeling like they have to be competitive with other women. It's men feeling threatened by women. It's the media pushing these narratives. It's the public liking these narratives and buying those newspapers, so then the media wants to do that more. Like, it's all these things that it's not one thing. It's not two things. It's everything feeds everything else. So you really need major cultural shifts for it to be fixed. And normally I think my personal view is that things change at the smallest level. So once public perceptions change, then everything else kind of adapts to it. But it's a slow process.
Right. Yeah.
But it was a really good speech. So if you haven't seen it,
yes,
watch it.
it was really, really good. I kept seeing it on my feed, but I could see that it was longer, and I was like, okay, this is something I'm probably going to want to like sit and pay attention to, because there's kind of some videos that you like can just read the caption at the bottom while you're doing something else. But take a few minutes, and it's really a wonderful speech. So check it out.
What struck me is I was seeing so many people post it, and either people were not putting a comment with it, or they were just putting exclamation points, or just wow,
or
like it was just, yeah, that's all it was. And it was like, that's how powerful it is that people were speechless and were like, I have nothing to add to this, just watch it.
Right. Yeah, that's really true. That's true. I didn't even think about that.
Well, thank you for joining me once again. It was
you.
a delight. Everyone can follow us on Twitter at CivilDTV, and I'm at Jayme Woj.
And I'm at Mindful Marilyn.
See you around and continue the conversation.
Yes,
we're on Facebook, sure. We're on Twitter. If you have comments, thoughts, let us know, because it's about mindfulness, so we're trying to expand.
Listening. Exactly. Have a good night.
Thank you.